Hey guys, it's Carly. Welcome back to Mostly Dating, a First Rounds on Media production. First Rounds on Me is an app that I've been talking about for years now, and if I was single, it's the first app that I would go to. It takes out the pen pal stage from dating. So if you feel like you get stuck in the talking stage on dating apps, this is the app for you because you're only allowed to chat for 24 hours before you actually plan a date. So you can use the link in my show notes and the code Mostly Dating to get your first month of the premium subscription for free, and let me know if you try it. I am so excited to be back with a solo episode today. I have been loving all the guest episodes, and obviously I talk in those episodes too, but when I go too long without a solo episode, I feel like I haven't talked to you guys in so long. So if you are new here, this podcast used to be, I guess I'll give you a little background because I do have a lot of new listeners over the past few weeks. So I used to co-host this podcast with my best friend, Mia, and it was called Mostly Balanced. We started off as very broad lifestyle, talking about dating, talking about fitness, talking about wellness, always mainly guest episodes with some solo episodes sprinkled in where the two of us would catch up and chat about things that were going on with us. And then we found that we mostly liked talking about dating and relationships. At the time, I was single and Mia was in a serious relationship. She had pretty much always been in serious relationships, and I was pretty much usually single. And so we felt like we brought different perspectives to the table. We did bring different perspectives to the table, and that's what people really liked. And those were the episodes that we felt like got the most listens, got the most traction, and people were asking for more of those. So then we niched down and became a full-on dating podcast. But at the same time, we still like to talk about all those other things. So that's why it's Mostly Dating. I ended up rebranding it about a year ago when Mia decided to leave the podcast. And people always ask who have been around for those 4 years, because now it's been 4 years since we started. People always ask, are you and Mia still friends? Yes, Mia and I are still best friends. She just had a baby. We text all the time. We see each other very often. I actually have not met the baby yet, but we are still very close and we didn't have any falling out. But what just happened was that she wanted to focus on her career outside of the podcast, and I wanted to really take the podcast to the next level. So we ended up parting ways, and now here we are. So the past year of me taking over has been really exciting, really cool to see the community grow so much. And really, I was so nervous in the beginning of going solo and having a solo podcast, but I love it. It's of course I miss Mia, and we used to have such a great time recording together and running the Instagram together and everything that went along with being co-host of the podcast. But there's something about doing it on your own that's just you obviously have to do more work, but you have so much freedom. And I still bring on so many guests. It's been kind of like I said, a lot more guests than solo episodes recently, which I love because I love interviewing people. But like I said, it makes me feel a little bit disconnected from you guys. So I'm trying to sprinkle in these solo episodes more often. Typically, I'll answer listener questions on these episodes. If you want to submit a question, you can either follow me on Instagram at Mostly Dating, and you can leave the question in the question box that I put up in my story a few times a week and ask me anything format. Or you can send me a DM, or you can send an email, and I'm going to put all of those details in the show notes so you can send it through there. I do ask if you have a longer question, send it in a DM or an email, because the question box, split up into 10 different small short questions, can be a little bit difficult to piece together. But today I just wanted to focus on catching up on some of those listener questions and maybe focusing in a little bit more on some of the topics that have just been getting repeated over and over. I feel like there are a lot of early stage dating questions that keep coming up. I think because a lot of my content focuses around defining the relationship and meeting people in real life and how questions to ask on dates and what to do on dates and how to handle awkward silences and everything like that. I do focus a lot on those early dating stages, but I also have a lot of great content for people who are in long-term relationships. I'm in a long-term relationship. I have a lot of listeners who are there, so I get questions in that arena as well. So don't shy away to ask any question, whether you're married, whether you have kids, whether you've been in a relationship for 3 years, 2 years, however long, or if you're single. I love covering all of it because it just makes it relatable for more people. So I guess I'll just catch up a little bit. So I feel like since my last solo episode, I'm pretty sure my last solo episode was back in January at this point, and now I'm recording this in early March. So There's been like a lot going on in my life too, and not really anything in the dating realm, but like I always say, I think all of these things impact each other. And so I just feel like this year has been like, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. This year has obviously been really heavy. There's been so much going on. I feel like I preach so much on this podcast about like your self care and maintaining your sense of self and how important that is for your relationships. And like, I truly, truly believe that. And I have been finding myself recently like, oh man, like I really have to dial in on that and like catch up on those things. And I'm just like saying that because I don't know who might relate to it right now, but just want you to know that it's like very, very relatable and very common. And even though I give dating advice for a part of my making a living, things are not always like perfect in my life either. I also like, again, if you're new here, you might not know, I split my time between doing this podcast and I also am an editor and write wellness content. And so I am very immersed in the wellness world and dating and lifestyle and all of those things. But that doesn't mean that I have it like all figured out. And so this year, like it's just been kind of one thing after another. First, I lost my previous full-time job and then I ended up losing my grandfather. And I just feel like there's like a million things going on. And it's been like a lot. So that's all to say that we all have our things going on. And I totally, totally see or hear you wherever you're at. And I appreciate you just taking the time to spend whatever this next 45 minutes with me or however long this episode is. But I'm going to get into it. So I guess before I get into the listener questions, a few people have asked me recently, can I do a full episode just on defining the relationship? And I actually have that episode already. So I'm going to link that again in the show notes. And I keep sharing on Instagram because I do get a lot of requests for it. But I have an episode. It's called, I can't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but I'll put it in the show notes. It's called Your Complete Guide to Defining the Relationship. And one thing that it doesn't go into, it goes into sort of like things you want to know about your partner before you define the relationship, conversations you should have with them before defining the relationship, signs they want to define the relationship. I talk a little bit about like how to have that conversation. I also talk about my age-old crisis of like why people feel the need to have this exclusivity definition before they actually are like boyfriend, girlfriend, or define the relationship. Like I kind of go into all the different nuances of that, but I don't dive into what is my most viral popular piece of content on Instagram, which is the 6 types of dates you should always go on before defining the relationship. So I figured I would take a few minutes to talk about that today. This is like my absolute favorite reel that I've ever made. I also then made it into a carousel post, so it's easier for some people like that format better. So I have both on my Instagram page. Again, that's at MOSTLYDATING, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. Show notes are getting super long by now. But this piece of content, the reason I love it so much is because I was just sitting on my couch one day, and this was a kind of tying back to what I was just talking about. This was like a couple days after Mia decided she didn't want to do the podcast and the Instagram anymore. And so I decided like, oh, I guess I'm going to take it over solo. And I was like a little nervous, like, am I going to have enough content or am I going to be able to do it by myself? And then I just started thinking about, I guess now at this point I had been with my boyfriend for a year, and somebody asked me something about like the early stages of our relationship. And I started thinking about like, why was it so easy? And I always say like, getting a relationship actually should be easy. A relationship itself, like, is not easy, but the act of getting into it once you meet somebody, that should feel easy. It's not easy to meet people. I'm definitely like not saying that. I've been through periods of time where I also thought I would like never meet somebody. So I understand you if you're feeling that way. But all I mean to say is that if you're in the early dating stages with somebody and you feel like so confused and so frustrated, and you feel like it's like an uphill battle of just like trying to convince this person to date you, or trying to get them on the same page as you, or trying to figure out where they're at, or even trying to figure out like where you're at and if you want to be with them. That shouldn't be an uphill battle. Getting into the relationship, those things should move pretty naturally. Like, of course, it's normal to have anxiety and nerves, and you need to have some conversations and some communication. It's not just going to like poof happen without any work or any communication. But it shouldn't be difficult, and it shouldn't be something that you're trying to convince them or yourself of. Those obstacles come like later on in the relationship. You're going to have obstacles in any relationship, and it's actually, in my opinion, a green flag or a red flag if you don't have any conflict with your partner. But again, those early dating stages should move like pretty naturally. It shouldn't be difficult. But at this point, I was thinking back to this and I was like, I wonder why like it was so natural for us, because I really hadn't had that experience before. I had always been like either trying to convince myself or convince the person. And so I started thinking back to like the dates that we went on. And then I really started thinking, I'm like, wow, I really think that people need to go on specific types of dates before they are ready to call that person like their partner or be in a relationship with that person. I think that the types of dates you're going on actually plays a huge role in helping you get to know each other and figure out if this is somebody you want to date. And so again, this is not about getting them to like you or like securing that person in your life. It's about deciding if you want to date them and if you like them and helping them get to know you better so they can make that informed decision about if they like you. Like, we're not trying to trick anybody or play games or fool them into being in a relationship with us. We're just trying to get to know each other and figure out if that relationship is going to work. So here's the quick breakdown, or I'll try to make it quick so I can get to the listener questions. But the first date I think you should go on is what I like to call the screener date. And I do get questions from people asking like, oh, where should I take her on her first date? I'm so excited. And like, so I feel a lot of pressure. I want to make sure it's perfect. And I appreciate that. Like, that's great that you want to put a lot of effort into your first date. But I honestly don't think that you need to. And that like people might disagree with me, but I don't think you should be putting all of this effort into the first time you're meeting somebody. Maybe this is a little different if you guys have like a super long history, and it's like really built up and now you're finally going out on date one. But this is just, let's assume you met this person at a bar, you met them on the street, you met them on an app. This is a new person for you, even a setup. First date is the screener, and that means it's drinks, it's coffee, it's a walk, it's ice cream, whatever. It's something doesn't necessarily have to be like super casual. Like, it can be at like a nice bar if you want it to be, but it's something low stakes. It's something that doesn't have a time like commitment to it. It's not like a sports game, it's not a movie, it's not a 4-course meal. It's just something where you can go meet the person and screen them. That's why I like to call it the screener. And you go like, this is the date that you're just going to be deciding, are you interested enough in this person to go on a second date with them? You're not deciding if this person is the person you're going to marry. You're not even deciding if this is the person you're going to be in a relationship with. You're simply deciding if this is somebody that you are going to go on a second date with. So again, it can be any of those number of activities, whatever type of thing that you're into, but I wouldn't suggest an actual like activity. Drinks, coffee, walk, whatever. The next date, I believe, should be a dinner date. Doesn't necessarily mean that has to be date 2, but that's the next type of date that you should introduce when you're introducing something into these dates before defining the relationship. Sometimes there's a second walk or a second coffee date or a second drink date after the initial screener date, and that's totally fine. Like, maybe you went for a walk for the first date, so then you get drinks for the second date and continue to get to know them. But I do think eventually there should be a dinner date. That I'm not meaning to say that because you have to like wine and dine the person or you need to impress them and take them to an amazing Michelin star restaurant. I just like genuinely do think it's important to sit down and have a meal with somebody before you define the relationship. I think that, again, there's a bit more time to it sometimes than just going for a drink. A drink, you just go, you can order a drink, and then if you both want to, you can go home after that. Dinner, obviously, you sit, you order, you see the age-old, how they interact with the wait staff. You get a feel for just like what they're like to eat a meal with. Like, how many meals are you going to eat with someone after you define the relationship? Probably a lot. So I think that dinner date is super important as well. I also think one thing I put in this list was like a vibey date. And so the reason that I put this in here, and this could be like 2 birds with 1 stone type of situation where the dinner date is the vibey date, or maybe the second drinks date is like a vibey bar. Either way, I think like once you've both decided that you're interested in continuing to get to know each other after date 1 or whenever it is, I think you should go to a setting that's like gonna build the chemistry and the connection. And so that's what the vibey date is. And of course, everybody is always wondering, like, should I continue to go out with this person? Like, they're really great on paper, or that they were like so nice and funny, but I didn't feel chemistry or I didn't feel the spark. That's like such a common thing. And I've had that issue too. A lot of the times I do think that has to do with the setting of the date. And that's why I do recommend going on this vibey date. Again, drinks at a cute cocktail bar, dinner at like a cute, trendy restaurant, just something with a vibe. And that's going to really help you build the chemistry. You'll be shocked at how much the setting plays a difference. Like if you keep going on coffee dates with people and you're just kind of crossing them off because you're not building any chemistry with them and you feel like it's not worth it, maybe give one of those people a second chance and make the second date the vibey date. Then there's the activity dates. So if you guys have been following or listening for a while, you know how much I love activity dates. There's actually research behind this. So there's research that shows that couples that try new things together and step outside of their comfort zone together have longer lasting, healthier, happier relationships. And I love that because it's so, so true. I was referencing my relationship earlier. When I think back to the early dates that we had, I can give you a little rundown. That's a question in one of my listener questions today, was what described the early dating stages. So I guess I can just give that now. So with my boyfriend, our first date was the drinks date. We went to Soho House in New York City and had drinks. Our second date was a dinner date. So really following these steps here. Our second date, we went to Anton's in the West Village and had dinner. And then we went to like a couple of different bars after that. The third date was a museum date. So I will get to that. So another type of date that I think you should go on before defining the relationship is what I like to call the educational dates. And that's similar to what I said about the activity dates. There are also studies that show that learning together can really bond you with somebody. So whether you're like taking a class with a friend and you bond with them, or in a relationship, if you learn something with somebody and you're continuing to like expand your brain and really just like expand your life, that's going to bond you with that person. It doesn't mean that like anytime you take a class with somebody or you learn something new with someone, you're going to get married, but it's just another way of getting to know somebody on a deeper level while you guys are both like learning something new. And so again, it doesn't have to be like a math class or like a Spanish class. It can be a cooking class or a trip to a museum, which is like what I said in my case. Our third date, we went to a museum. And we weren't, at this point, like I didn't have in my head this recipe of the dates we should go on. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, the reason that we went to a museum is because our first two dates were both way too long. Like they both lasted like 5 hours long, which I know people say not to do. And we both had definitely too many drinks. And I was kind of like, I have so much fun with this person, but is it because we both just like had too many drinks and stayed out for too long? And so I think I expressed this to him like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Because I am honestly not a drinker. I don't like, I'll go out and have a cocktail or like maybe two with friends or now with Sean, my boyfriend. But like, I got kind of nervous after those two dates because I'm like, oh, I'm actually really starting to like this person. And I don't think I can keep up with this lifestyle. Like, is this what he does every weekend night? Does he go out and stay out for 5 hours and like drink a lot? And so I think I dropped a hint or like just straight out said to him, like, I don't know. Like, I honestly don't think I'm going to survive if we keep going out on these dates where like I wake up hungover. And so he said, let's do a museum date. I don't really love museums. If you like museums, I think a museum date is a great date for you. This was probably our most awkward date. So if you're not a museum person, like I'm not really, I would suggest your educational date be something different. Like I said, a cooking class or like there's like cocktail making classes. Like it doesn't have to be like you're learning some deep knowledge. It can just be something that you guys are doing again that's like different and stepping out of your comfort zone and like learning something new and or testing out a new skill or whatever it is. And so that's what I would suggest. After that, I believe was when we had our exclusivity conversation and we decided to be exclusive. And then we went on like a lot more dates. We probably dated for like 3 months before we actually defined the relationship. So that was our history. But getting back to the types of dates. So there are 6. I've given you 4 already. The first one was the screener date. The second one was the vibey date. The third one was the dinner date. Then we had the activity date and the educational date. So I actually gave you 5 already. Number 6 is probably the most controversial one on the list. This is the friend date or dates. Like doesn't matter. Depends on how long you end up dating before defining the relationship. But why I think so. All the friend date is a date or an activity where you go and meet their friends and they meet your friends or at least like one of their friends or one person in their life or they meet like one person in your life. I think that it's like probably a bad idea to define a relationship or like sign on for a relationship with somebody before you've met any of the people in their life. Some people disagree and some people think like, why would I introduce somebody who's not my boyfriend to my friends? But my answer is because you want to see what they're like around your friends and because they should see how you are around your friends. You should see what they're like around their friends if you like their friends. I don't think you need to love every single one of your partner's friends in order for the relationship to work, but I think you should in general, feel comfortable around them, and you should like the person that your partner is around their friends, and you should like how they act around your friends. I just think that you learn all of these dates. The reason I say you should, quote, always go on them, and again, it's not an exact science, but the reason I say that is because it just helps you get to know them. It helps you get to see them in different situations. It helps put you yourself in a different situation where maybe you'll think of a different topic you want to talk about or share something with them that you might not have thought to share or felt natural sharing on just a dinner date or just at a bar with a person. You'll be shocked, just playing mini golf might bring up a million different topics that never would have come up if you were just sitting at a coffee shop with them. So it just puts you in different scenarios. And I think that helps bring you closer, which is really important before you're defining a relationship with someone, to actually feel close to them and feel like you know them. That's also why I always say you should keep doing these types of dates through the entire relationship, because you should always keep getting to know somebody. First of all, because you'll never know every single thing there is to know about a person. And second of all, because people are always changing. So don't you want to continue to get to know the person that you're spending your time or potentially your life with? And so that's just a quick overview that was kind of scattered around a little bit. Sorry, but I've been wanting to share that on the podcast because the number of people that I've seen do this, copy this post and use my exact caption and exact words is extremely frustrating. It keeps coming up on my Instagram. I keep having you guys send it to me. So I see the messages, thank you. But it's I was okay, I need to just put this out there on the podcast. It's not rocket science, but it is a topic that I really love talking about. And so I wanted to make sure to share it on here as well. Hopefully it will help some of you guys that are in the early dating stages kind of figure out where to go from there. And also if you're a female and you're dating a male and maybe he's been planning all of the dates, use this as an opportunity to tell him oh, actually we should do this and suggest a date. Guys do like that. Yes, if you want the guy to take the lead, that's totally fine. And it's all good. You don't have to plan a date if they're continuing to plan them. But I think it's nice to show a little effort of oh, we should go to this arcade or for our next date, or oh, I heard about this great restaurant with a really cool vibe, we should go there. Suggesting a date to somebody is a simple way to show that you're interested in them, and we want people to know that we're interested in them. We aren't playing games, we're not trying to hide it. Okay, I'm going to get into some of these listener questions, which are mostly just short, quick questions from my Ask Me Anything box and my DMs on Instagram. And next solo episode, I'll get into some of the longer email questions. So again, you can send me an email. Email address is in the show notes if you want me to get into your question on a future episode. This person says, I asked a guy if he wanted to grab dinner. He seemed excited but hasn't made plans. Help. So this is very similar to what I was just talking about. You're allowed to plan the date as well. And I actually think that you should if you're the one that asked him. So if you asked him to grab dinner and he seemed excited and then you just stopped and waited for him to make a plan, that's totally fine, but make the plan. He's probably wondering, why did she ask me to grab dinner? I told her yes, and then she never made a plan. So it's not like a game of chicken. We don't have to sit back and wait for the other person. He already seemed excited. You want to go out to dinner. Ask him for a specific date. And this is why I hate planning vague dates. Hey, do you want to go out sometime? Is so vague. It's then the person says yes, and then you're both sitting there wondering for a week if neither of you just speaks up and says, let's go out next Tuesday. So that's what I would do. I would circle back. I don't know if this was a text or a dating app or in person, but I would just say hey, how about that dinner do you want to do next Thursday? And see what he says. And then from there, it would be nice if he chose the place and everything. But again, you don't have to sit back and wait. You can choose the place. The important thing is you guys actually getting out on the date and then how things play out from there. So if you go on this date with him and then after that, he doesn't ask you on another date, or you feel 3-4 dates in, you're the one that's continuing to ask, that I would say is a red flag. But I don't think you planning or the day of the first date is a bad thing. It doesn't mean that they're not interested. If he goes on the date and then he continues to pursue and he's showing consistency, then that's great. Okay. First date, she said she wasn't sure if she felt a spark or not. She's happy to meet again though. Is this a good sign? It's not necessarily like a bad sign. It's not definitely not like a good sign, but it's not a bad sign. I think that there is a lot of advice and a lot of thought out there these days that you should continue to go on dates even if you don't feel a spark, which I would tend to agree with. I think you need to feel some attraction, and I cannot emphasize that enough because anytime I speak about this, people are like, why are you telling us to go out on dates with guys that we don't find attractive? It's like, I'm not saying you should go out with a guy that you know you would never be attracted to. But if you've been on a date with him and, like this person said, they're not sure if they feel a spark, but you think they're attractive, or you could see a world where you're attracted to this person and you're still curious to get to know them, like going on a second date or a third date or a fourth date is not signing a marriage contract or a marriage license. Like, it's just continuing to get to know the person until there's one person that wants something from the relationship that you don't want. It's okay that you're still going on these dates to figure out if you like them. Like, that's what dates are for. You're not supposed to know right away if you like the person, or I guess you're not supposed to know right away if you want to date this person. If you want to go out on another date, that's great. And for this person who's kind of getting that feedback from someone, the reason why I said like it's not necessarily a good sign is because I know it would definitely throw me off if I got this from somebody. Like, I almost think it's kind of like she's giving too much information. Like, if you don't feel a spark with someone, but you're still wanting to go on another date with them, just tell them, yes, you want to go on another date with them. Unless they're like flat out asking, do you feel a spark? And you feel like compelled to tell them no. I just think that's like a little bit too much information and might make them like a little nervous. Whereas, like, if you are interested enough to go out on another date with this person, don't you want to put them in the best position to like be a good date? I don't think you should like throw them off by saying like, "Oh, I don't know if I like you, but like, oh, I'll give it a try." Like, it just seems a little bit awkward. So I can understand why you're like not sure about this because it's just a little strange she said that. But the important thing is she said yes, she would go out again. And so if you're still into it, go out again and see how it is. But if it gets to the point where it feels like you're trying to like convince her of something, that's when I would kind of like call it. Nobody needs to, I'm not going to go down the whole road of the black cat golden retriever thing right now, but I don't think that anyone really needs to be like full on chasing. It's okay if you feel like you're trying to like woo someone or whatever the old fashioned terms are. But if she's telling you like, oh, I don't think I'm into it, I would stop. But if she's still going out on dates with you, that's fine. Should we hold people accountable for ghosting or just let it go and move on? It's so common, but it shouldn't be. I feel like we can do better as a society with ghosting, and I think you can do so in a tactful way. What are your thoughts? Okay, I'm just going to take a quick break to tell you a little bit more about our sponsor, First Rounds on Me. So, we all know the struggle that comes along with using dating apps, waiting for their reply, spending too much time texting, and then never going out in real life. First Rounds on Me changes the game by making the transition from online chat to in person meetup as easy and as smooth as possible. So, there's no endless back and forth. The app only gives you 24 hours to chat, so you'll know right away if there's a spark and if you're going to meet up. And there's no need to plan the perfect date or have endless discussions. First Rounds on Me actually has a built-in planner that makes it easy to set things up and really enjoy the moment. And it's all about quality, not quantity. So I don't believe that dating is a numbers game. It's about being intentional. On First Rounds on Me, you only get one match per day, so you can have a focused and intentional approach to dating. No more endless scrolling, just real connections. First Rounds on Me takes the pressure off dating. Head to the link in the show notes and you can get your first month for free with the code MOSTLYDATING. Should we hold people accountable for ghosting or just let it go and move on? It's so common, but it shouldn't be. I feel like we can do better as a society with ghosting, and I think you can do so in a tactful way. What are your thoughts? I thought about this one for a while because I can't decide. Like, yes, it feels like empowering and great to tell somebody, I didn't like that you ghosted me because it made me feel like disrespected and whatever, however you would phrase it. But at the same time, it's like, what's that going to do? But I guess if it makes you feel better, I don't think that a person who ghosted you is honestly going to be that affected by it. Like, if they ghosted you and they see that message, they might just like delete the message and not say anything. And like, I would just think really hard about like, are you sending this message because you want validation, you want them to reply and like own up to their actions? Or are you sending it because you just want to feel better and you want to know that you like said your piece? Like, I definitely wouldn't say it's a bad thing to send it. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't believe you called him out for ghosting you or her out for ghosting you. I think it's fine if you want to. I just don't think it's gonna like do much good. I think that somebody who's ghosting you knows what they're doing. And if they eventually are going to like have a conscience and feel bad about it, then they will. And I don't know if you saying anything is gonna make much of a difference. But that's just my opinion. I probably wouldn't, but it depends. Like ghosting, there is a large ghosting scale. And sometimes people are calling it ghosting when you just had a few messages on a dating app and then you unmatch them without saying anything. And then some people are being ghosted after dating someone for like 9 months. And so on that side of things, 1,000% I would say something. If someone ghosted me after I was dating them for a significant period of time, I would absolutely send them a text or whatever the method that we're communicating is. I would absolutely say something about how disrespectful that is and how it made me feel. And then I would just call, like I would send that text and then I would just like move on with my life and just feel good that I said my piece. But if it was like a few messages on a dating app, I would never call that ghosting. If it was like 2 dates, I probably wouldn't say anything, but I would definitely call that ghosting. So it just depends on like how long you were talking to them or dating them and really just what you want to do. I feel like I don't have like a strong enough stance to tell you not to do it. I'm just saying I probably wouldn't unless I had a significant relationship with that person. I have one memory of being ghosted. And again, because that's because I define ghosting as like going out on actual dates with the person and then reaching out to them and having them say absolutely nothing to me in return and then just like poof disappearing. And I like remember this so clearly is that because I'm sure I've had situations where we were messaging and then they just disappeared or like we were messaging and they never made a plan and then it fizzled. Like again, I don't call that ghosting. But this situation where I was ghosted, I remember it was like he asked me out in the cutest way. And so, of course, you build that up. When somebody asks you out in real life and you meet in real life, there's like already it's at like a higher caliber than if you met them on a dating app. I also think this was like before dating apps existed. So now I'm aging myself. But I think it was, I guess I would say it was probably like 2013. So maybe dating apps were around. It was 2012, 2013. I feel like it was like the okcupid.com days before things were on the app. It was like the dating website days and I wasn't really on those. So I was on this subway in New York City and I was kind of like looking at this guy and he was so cute. And at this point I guess I was in my early 20s. Yeah, I guess I was in my early 20s. I was probably like 22, 23. I'm very bad at math right now for some reason. But so I was like 22, 23. I was on my way to my job at a coffee shop at the time. And I kept looking over at this guy and he was so cute. And he kept looking over at me. And it was just like the classic, like I kept making eye contact and smiling. So he would know that I was into him, which is still what I would recommend. If you see someone, eye contact, smile, do it like 3 times and hopefully they'll come over and approach you. But he then was getting off at the next stop, and right before he got off, he like handed me this index card. That when I kept looking at him, he was like using flashcards, like he was studying for something or something. And so he handed me an index card, and it had his name and number. I still remember I think his name was Tom, and he gave me his little flashcard with his name and number. And then just like when he handed it to me, he said like, text me or call me if you want to go out sometime. Which I thought was like so cute. And I honestly would like, I don't know if you're ever in a situation where you have like flashcards or index cards or any piece of paper. I don't know if people carry business cards anymore, but I would recommend like if you feel anxious or nervous approaching somebody in real life, that's like such an easy way to do it because it's like low stakes. First of all, this was very low stakes because he was getting off the subway. It's like he didn't have to like, it's different if you're going to be like sitting in the same room as them afterwards. But if you're like on your way out the door at like a restaurant or a bar, or even if you like see someone at a coffee shop or on the street, I think like handing them a card or something with your number and your name on it and just quickly saying, text or call me if you want to go out sometime. It like leaves a lot less room for rejection than like walking up and saying like, hey, I'm Carly, what's your name? Or like, hey, I'm Carly, do you want to go out? Like, I just feel like it could feel really intimidating. And so Loved that he did that. Texted him. Long story short, we went out on a date. It was amazing. It was so much fun. I thought he was like so cool and so cute. He was in med school, and I was like super into him after date one. Again, I was like 22. And then after that, I just never heard from him. I texted him saying thanks for the date, and he never answered. And the next day, I think I probably sent like a follow-up text, like asking him how his day was. He just never answered. And at this point, I hadn't even heard the term ghosting. I honestly thought that he died. I was just like assumed. I was like, oh, he must have died. Like I don't know why I wouldn't hear from this person again. It was like, I feel like so pre the New York City dating scene, because that was in the like probably the first couple of years of my New York City days right after college. And now I feel like everyone's like so jaded that they just assume if they don't hear from someone for like 2 hours that they're being ghosted. But I hadn't even like considered that was the fact. So anyway, that was my one ghosting story. But to answer your question, I think it's up to you. If you want to call them out for it, you can. I wouldn't like expect it to really do much though. This person says, I put my job on my dating app. I work at MSG, and I was thinking my likes would soar, but they didn't. What are your thoughts? I do work there. This made me laugh. A couple of different layers to this. I mean, I think it's normal to put your job on your dating app, but I am picturing this being like in your prompt. Like, I don't know what the prompt would be, but your response is probably like, I work at MSG and I can get you free tickets to your favorite concert or something like that. Like, and that like rubs me the wrong way. It gives me the ick. It's probably like this is a man asking it. I'm not trying to roast you, but like, I think women probably are turned off by this. And if people are into it, I think it's probably not the person you want to date if they're only dating you because they want tickets to a free concert. And another thing, so that's one layer of it. I would just take it out of there. You can keep it in like your profession, but I would bet like maybe $100 right now that it's a prompt response. And I think that's too much to put it there. Like anything, that's the other layer of this. Anything you're putting in your prompts thinking that your quote likes would soar is not something that you should put in your prompts. Like, we're not trying to put on an act and attract as many likes as possible. Your prompts are supposed to tell about you, who you are, and the type of person that you're like wanting to attract. And that's all, because that's going to bring in the right types of people. If you wanted to put something in your prompt like, I'm rich and I can take you on like the best dates ever, like, yeah, sure. I'm sure a lot of people are going to respond and be like, okay, like, let's go here. Or like, you can attract a lot of people by trying to attract a lot of people, but unless that's your intention, that's not what you should do on an app. You should be trying to attract the right types of people, even if it's less. It's like the whole quality over quantity thing. So yeah, I would take that out. Okay. This person says, I don't have sex before I'm in a long-term relationship. How do I say that in early dating without scaring them off or being demanding? This is a situation where like, I don't necessarily think this is something you need to tell them. I think you can just do that. Like, I think you can just not have sex with them. And if they're like pressuring you to have sex, like obviously then that's a red flag and that's not the right person for you. But if it's like coming up and you're feeling like, okay, this is something we have to address because maybe they keep kind of like wanting you to come over or like sort of like being more physical than like you want them to be, but you're still into them. Like if it's not feeling pushy, it's just feeling like you don't want them to think you're not into them and you feel like you need to say something, then I think that you can. But I think probably the best thing is to first be like transparent about what you're looking for. So you're looking for something serious. So that can be said and indicated separately from the whole like sex and intimacy side of things. Like that should be a conversation that you're having early on in a relationship. Like, just so you know, I'm dating intentionally because I want a boyfriend. I'm looking for a long-term relationship. I don't really do casual. Like you can say those types of things on those early dates so that they know that. And I think that even those facts alone will indicate that you're not just going to sleep with this person if things aren't going toward like a long-term relationship. And then in the meantime of that, I think you can give other like physical cues that you're interested in them and like attracted to them. Because I do think that although I don't think you need to like say explicitly, I'm not having sex until we're in a long-term relationship, I do think it's like important to show them that you're physically attracted to them if you are. Because I have talked to like a lot of men and women both who have sort of like pulled back or not tried as hard at something because they feel like the other person isn't really like returning the attraction level. Not saying that someone's going to pull back if you don't have sex with them. Like, obviously, I'm not saying that. Again, that would not be the right person. But if they're sort of like touching your arm or putting their hand on your back or just like being a little bit more touchy and you're really, really reserved because maybe you're in your head that you don't want to give the wrong idea or like you don't want them to think you're going to sleep with them, like, I maybe like give them like a touch again on the arm or on the leg or like whatever and just like show that you're into it or like those types of things. Or if you have kissed them, like maybe you initiate a kiss or like you just do those things so they know that you're into them. And I think that that will help a lot. But you definitely can frame this if you do want to like have the conversation and tell them this. There is a way to frame it without being like, I will not sleep with you until we're exclusive or until we're in a long-term relationship. I think you could just say like exactly what you said, how you framed it in this question. Like, just a heads up, like I know things are going really well with us. I just don't really sleep with people until I'm like in a defined relationship with them. I don't want to put pressure on the timeline of our relationship. So I'm not saying we need to do that right now. Like if you're not ready for that right now, you can say that part. But just wanted you to know so that you don't think that I'm not into you or something like that. I think just like be vulnerable about it and speak honestly. Usually, like a lot of times when people ask a question, on this podcast and they're like, I feel like XYZ, how do I tell the person? My response is going to be like, tell them just like that. Like the way you said it is fine. So that's how I would say it to the person. 4 great dates with someone and then I ran into him at a mutual friend's birthday and he is super awkward, question mark. This is definitely weird. 4 great dates. I'm just going to say that it's a lot of dates. Like it's not, again, it's not the amount of dates that you have before you like move in with somebody, but it's kind of not that common to have 4 great dates with someone these days. Like a lot of times people are not getting past the first date or the second date. So 4 great dates. And then there are a couple layers of like, why I think this is weird. Like 4 great dates and then you run into them randomly at the mutual friend's birthday party. Like, I just wonder if you have a ton of mutual friends or if this is like you have 1 or 2 that you've already talked about. And it's weird to me that like it didn't come up like, oh, are you going to Susan's birthday party or whatever? Like, I feel like if you knew you had this mutual friend, it seems like after 4 great dates with someone, it would feel pretty natural to ask them, are you going to be at this birthday party? And so that part of it makes me feel like maybe things aren't as great as you thought that they were, or you don't have like as strong of a connection because you might not have felt comfortable just asking them that. And I do think like, we're probably not going to get to these questions today, but I had a lot of questions that were about like the level of communication you should have with somebody early on in dating. And I do think that after 3, 4, 5 dates, like it should just feel pretty natural that like if something happened that made you think of them, or if you have like a random question for them, or if you're going to this party and you're wondering if they're going to be there, you shouldn't be like feeling the need to text 20 of your friends and ask them what they think. Like if you should send this text and sending screenshots to the group chat of like how you should ask them, like it should just come pretty naturally that you're like, hey, are you going to be at Susan's birthday party? And so that's kind of like I don't know, like a pink flag that you might not have felt comfortable asking them that. So then you were kind of just like surprised by them being there. But again, this could be somebody that like you just go to the same school with and like you didn't expect them to be there and they were there. Like, so it's not necessarily a huge deal, but the fact that things were awkward at the party is definitely not a great sign. Like, could be nerves on their end. Like if you were awkward because you were nervous, like it could go both ways. Like that could be what it is. But if I had been on 4 dates with someone and then we were like at a party, I feel like I would want to be like not spending the entire night with them, but like maybe like spending a little more time with them or like maybe being like more like touchy or like just like I would want people to like be able to tell that we had been on 4 dates, like not again, like making out at the party or being all over each other, but like it would be weird if they were treating me just like my like friend who was also there. Like I just think that that's like a little bit strange. I would probably just ask them about it on your next date. So if you have a next date plan, that's a great like sign. I think that that's good. But if you go out on the date, I would say like, how come you were so awkward at Susan's birthday party? And see what they say. And then maybe that will bring up a conversation about exclusivity or where you both want the relationship to go or what you're both looking for. So I think this could be like a good thing because it could bring up more opportunity for communication. Let's do one more. Oh, this one got a lot of feedback, so I'm going to end on this one. This person says, 5 dates and he has brought me gifts on every single one besides the first. Super sweet. Is it love bombing or is it sweet? So it's funny because she says it was sweet and then she asks, is it love bombing or is it sweet? To me, this initially gave a love bombing vibe. And I said that, but I also was curious, like, what were the gifts? Because I hate overused terms like narcissist and love bombing and ghosting, like I was talking about before. So, like, I can't like prescribe this with like, yes, he is officially a love bomber just based on this like quick sentence. But it just gives weird vibes that like to bring a gift on 4 out of 5 dates seems very strange. I ended up asking her what the gift was because I was curious like what they were, and they ended up being like cute small things. Like it was like he brought her, one of them was like flowers, one of them was chocolates, and this was around Christmas time, so one of them was like an ornament. I felt like, again, it could go either way, but it sparked me to be really curious like what the weirdest gifts are that people have received on dates. So I asked this in a poll or in a question on my Instagram. So I'm going to read some of the responses because I just want to end on a funny note. So let's pull this up. Okay. Oh, so this is what she said. It was a Christmas ornament, chocolate, wine, and flowers. So all separated out. Wine is weird. Like a bottle of wine is a little bit odd. Chocolate, flowers, Christmas ornament. I don't know. For some reason, the wine is weird to me because it's like, are you going to carry it the whole night? But those little things, like this guy might just have really good manners, or he's like trying really hard. He's like super into you. I can't officially say that he's like, quote, love bombing you because I don't have enough information. And love bombing is like intentionally manipulative. And so I just like have a hard time with that one. Okay, so what is the weirdest gift someone has given you on an early date? These are some of the responses. I'm not going to give all of them, but some of these are really funny. Okay. A slice of brownie. He packed it in a container that I never get to return. So I guess she didn't go on another date with him. Tortilla chips and salsa. A cat in space t-shirt that was too small for me. Clip-on earrings, even though my ears are pierced. A container of mashed potatoes. Bouquet of roses. I feel like that's pretty classic. Peanut butter flavored bubbles for my dog. There were a few that people got gifts for their dog, which I think is like a little less weird, but still kind of weird. Girl brought me carrot cake and we hadn't even been on a date yet. So I guess girls are doing it too. He tried to buy me a necklace before our first date and said it was to ask me to be his girlfriend. A portable humidifier, a pink rabbit's foot, king size comforter not matching the colors on my bed, a deck of playing cards, betta fish in a mason jar, a gift card for a massage on the first date. I mean, I'll take it. A guy made me a pie once on a first date. He bought me two this is my favorite one. He bought me 2 full bags of groceries. I'm so curious. Did you go grocery shopping together and he bought them, or did you just bring you like a random selection? How did he know what you wanted? A DIY store voucher, an orchid and 3 gift cards, an adult toy, a bottle opener, eye masks, a pack of surface wipes, a huge mirror, chopsticks. My boyfriend bought me a sushi making kit on an early date, but it wasn't the first. A heart magnet, balloons, a box of chocolates. That's pretty normal. A wedge of cheese, and he's now my husband. Okay, this girl wins. I want someone to bring me cheese on a first date. House keys, a 5-pound bag of whole coffee beans, a broken record player. I feel like that's like a metaphor or something. A tacky Christmas sweater, a Burt's Bees chapstick pack, hummus, a lot of food. That's like so random. A candle, teddy bear, a Beatles key ring, a puppy. I don't believe that. There's no way. Quiche, Lego flowers, treats for my dogs. Okay, these are great. Tell me the weirdest gift you ever got on a date, because now I'm really curious. This sent me down like a very long rabbit hole. Okay. I think I'm going to end on that note because, again, we could all use a good laugh right now. So hopefully that made you laugh or made you think about the weirdest gift that you ever got on a date. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave a rating and a review on Apple. Subscribe on YouTube. You can watch the full episodes on YouTube. The channel name is Mostly Dating. That is also in the show notes. And also videos are available on Spotify. Give a rating there as well. Thank you guys so much. If you have a question, again, ask it on Instagram at Mostly Dating or send me an email. And I will be back next week with another episode. Thank you so much.